Today on Time About the Movies, the battle between the vampires and the Lycans takes on a brand new angle as another group of people are brought into the fight. Kate Beckinsale stars in the fourth installment of the Underworld series, the third in particular in the series, direct sequel to Underworld Evolution because the last one was a prequel, Underworld Awakening. We also have the George Lucas-produced Red Tails, and we also have Steven Soderbergh directing Gina Carano in her first feature film debut, her leading feature film debut in Haywire, which is a good movie with a couple of noted exceptions that we'll get to as we go along here. January 20th, 2012, today on Time About the Movies.
Underworld Awakening in IMAX 3D, rated R.
And welcome to Time About the Movies. Today we are taking a look at the three films that make up January 20th, 2012 slate of films. And the first one that we have here, is the biggest new release, is Underworld Awakening. Mankind discovers the existence of the vampire and lycan species and begins a war to annihilate the races. When Selena meets with Michael, played by, I think it's, Michael Ealy. I thought it was somebody else, but Michael Ealy plays him. They're hit by a grenade. 12 years later, Selena awakens and meets the vampire David. She learns that she has been the subject of scientist Dr. Jacob Lane, and the vampire and lycan species have been practically eradicated from Earth. Now Selena and David must protect a 12-year-old girl against the lycans who intend to use her. So yeah, it's a movie that takes the series and basically makes it a fish-out-of-water story in general. And you know, I've never been a fan of the Underworld series in general, but I like it more than I do the Resident Evil films. With the Resident Evil films, you really do get the sense that you watch these movies and you feel like there's just nothing there. It's the same movie over and over and over again, and except the fact that you have Mila Jovovich, who's my least favorite actress out there. Yeah, I don't like her as an actress at all. Again, probably a nice person in real life, but she sucks as an action heroine. Kate Beckinsale, though, at least is doing more action in these movies and makes her, and she is a pretty good action heroine in these movies, even if the movies themselves are not that great. This one, I would say, maybe is probably my favorite one of the series, if you even want to call it my favorite. It's just kind of like, it's just fine for what it is. It's nothing too amazing, nothing too spectacular, but what it gives you is it is something that is very much a different movie compared to the original two films that came before it, and the prequel. It's just kind of like, it's just, I mean, I really don't have much more to say about it per se. I mean, like I said, I've never been a fan of these movies, but I'll give it this: it's definitely a lot better than the Resident Evil movies. Plus, J. Michael Straczynski is one of the screenwriters for this, so at least there's some credible writers on here. But and also, it's better than the next action movie that Kate Beckinsale will be in, where her husband basically does the same thing to her, what Paul W.S. Anderson does with Mila Jovovich in the Resident Evil movies. But we'll save that for whenever Total Recall comes out. So, but yeah, Underworld Awakening, mixed review, but it is my favorite one of the series. Take that for what you will. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the next movie we have here, and that is the George Lucas-produced Red Tails.
Red Tails, January 20th, rated PG-13.
Yeah, you can kind of see why this movie did not perform as well as they should have. But this was notable because this was a George Lucas-produced movie. It was his first real film that he had produced outside of the Indiana Jones and Star Wars movies for a long period of time. And it was actually the last Lucasfilm movie released before eventually being purchased by Walt Disney about 9 months later. And it's also notable for being Cuba Gooding Jr.'s first theatrically released film since Daddy Day Camp, which, I mean, it's better, but not saying a whole lot there. It is about the Tuskegee Airmen, a group of African-American United States Army Air Force servicemen during World War II. The characters in the film are fictional, although they're based on real individuals, and you have Terrence Howard also in here, along with Neo and Elijah Kelly, David Oyelowo from Selma, Nate Parker, Bryan Cranston's also in the movie as well, Gerald McRaney, Daniel Arula from NCIS. So there is some notable names in here, and it's interesting because this was written by John Ridley, who would later go win an Oscar for 12 Years a Slave, and Aaron McGruder, the creator of The Boondocks, wrote this movie too, which is funny because there was actually a scene in The Boondocks in one of the episodes where they did show off, I think it was the Tuskegee Airmen, but there was a scene where you see somebody in a plane in World War II. So I'm guessing that was it. I haven't seen that. I haven't watched the Boondocks in a while, so I would have to double check just to make sure. But It's notable for being the first Lucasfilm production since Radioland Murders that's not associated with excuse me, that's not associated with Indiana Jones or Star Wars. And it's funny because Terrence Howard previously played a Tuskegee pilot in Heart's War, the Nicolas Cage movie, and also Cuba Gooding Jr. starred originally in the original Tuskegee Airmen movie for HBO about the same group of pilots. And that film in particular, I think, is the much better movie. This one, I think, tries way too hard to be the next kind of like Indiana Jones type adventure. This should not be something that should be an Indiana Jones type of movie. This isn't. George Lucas looked at this and said, "We need to make something like another Star Wars-esque film." I tried with Willow years ago, and that didn't work out very well. And you could tell from the lackluster characters, a ton of cliches you've seen in a lot of those Indiana Jones Star Wars movies. Really bad dialogue. I mean, dialogue that is so much. Like, it's amazing that Disney didn't hand in this, because this sounds like Disney caliber writing at times for these characters. And you got a great cast involved in here, a good idea for the big screen, and people that can make it work, but the script overall just feels like it was lacking. Like, this does not feel like the best efforts from Ridley and Magruder on this one, It's directed by somebody who's worked in television for a number of years. This is the guy that worked on shows like Tremaine, NYPD Blue, Anthony Hemingway. This is his only movie he's ever done as a director, and it's a shame that it's this film in particular, because you feel like there's so much more that can be done about the story of these people. There's so much there that can be done with this tale in general, but it really does feel empty when you come out of it. Like, you feel nothing from this. And like I said, you'd be better off watching the HBO movie of the same name, of the name of the Tuskegee Airmen, because that is the much better movie. This, not so much. Even with the impressive cast it has on board here, it just doesn't work. So unfortunately, it's a hard skip for me on Red Tails as well. So can we finally find a good movie to wrap this weekend up? And we do have that, at least with the last one we have here, Steven Soderbergh's latest film, Haywire.
Haywire. Rated R, January 20th.
Needless to say, this is definitely a much better Steven Soderbergh movie than Contagion was. At least in this person's opinion. But beautiful freelance covert operative Mallory Kane, played by Gina Carano, who back then was an MMA fighter, is hired out by her handler to various global entities to perform jobs which governments can't authorize and heads of state would rather not know about. After a mission to rescue a hostage in Barcelona, Mallory is quickly dispatched on another mission to Dublin. When the operation goes awry and Mallory finds she's been double-crossed, she needs to use all of her skills, tricks, and abilities to escape an international manhunt, make it back to the United States, protect her family, and exact revenge on those that betrayed her. You have a great supporting cast that also includes Michael Douglas, Antonio Banderas, which, by the way, good job of spoiling the ending in that clip with Antonio Banderas in the trailer. No, seriously. That's literally how the movie ends. She shows up at his apartment, and it looks like he's going to get killed, and then the movie ends. So, spoiler alert, sorry. Ewan McGregor, Michael Fassbender, Channing Tatum. Channing Tatum's going to have a really good year in 2012 with a couple of big movies. And Bill Paxton. And I really enjoyed the hell out of this movie. It's a really solid action film with a lot of great action sequences that don't have to rely on the big explosions or overhyped special effects to be entertaining. This feels like an action film straight out of the 60s or 70s, made for modern times. I mean, you don't get music during the action sequences, which I think is very interesting and unique to do. It makes the action feel more realistic than it should. And Gina Carano does a pretty good job in her acting debut. However, her voice was altered for this film, so I can't really say that much about her acting in the movie. But even if the voice was altered, which it was, yeah, but she's fine in this. Her fighting style does work very well here, and of course before that she was known for not only being an MMA fighter, but also being Crush in the remake of American Gladiators, which, of course, we don't know her for that now. We know that her career has taken a radically different turn after this, but the rest of the cast overall is really good, especially with Ewan McGregor. I think delivering a pretty good rare bad guy role for him. It's probably the first one he's ever done, if I'm not mistaken. And, you know, like I said, but there is one thing that I will say that's kind of bad about him in this, is that it's Channing Tatum. And Channing Tatum has gone on to prove how good of an actor he really is, but back then it was hard for me to buy him as a badass. I mean, G.I. Joe, that was fine because the film was having fun with itself, but this is supposed to be a more serious film, and this movie in particular really didn't do it for him. I'm not saying he's a bad action actor, but back then it was really hard to buy him as this badass at first. But then again, a couple months later, 21 Jump Street comes out, and then following that, Magic Mike comes out. So my thoughts on him quickly changed as the year went on, but needless to say. But It really was an early candidate for one of the year's best movies. I think it's a smartly written, smartly paced movie, and it did a better job than movies that have come up before this, like Salt and Hannah did. And, you know, Steven Soderbergh, this is definitely his strongest movie he did since The Informant. I mean, this is a really good movie. It shows what his capabilities of as a director, doing multiple movies a year. And he knocks it out of the park with this. It's a really good movie. It's a very underrated film. I mean, even though you may have your feelings about Gina Carano nowadays, this is definitely worth checking out to see what she can do early on in her career. I think it's well worth a watch, well worth checking out. Haywire, seek it out. And thus, with all that said, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies, and the next time we meet, we'll wrap January 2012 off with Liam Neeson once again starring in another big action movie, coming out the same weekend 3 years after Taken was a big success, with Joe Carnahan directing him in The Grey. Katherine Heigl tries to move her career back on track with One for the Money, based off of the series of books. We have Sam Worthington coming off of his success with Avatar, with Man on a Ledge, and we have Glenn Close trying so hard to get that Oscar, but sadly Albert Nobbs was not the movie to get it with. We'll talk about those 4 movies and others coming up tomorrow on the show, so definitely be on the lookout for that. With all that said, though, thank you so much for watching this. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please do me the honor and go ahead and hit that like button, that subscribe button, and that notification button. Also, don't forget to check out our playlist, and don't forget to check out the last episode we did. I just realized the camera was not on me. Was like cut off at the whole time. So yeah, playlist, last episode. So with all that said, whether it's in the past, the present, or the future, I will see you at the movies. Take care.